Yesterday, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley announced that she is going to be retiring from her position within the next 2 months, and people have been speaking about this as some unexpected event no one saw coming. There was talk before she resigned that supposedly she would mount a presidential campaign or a primary challenge against Trump in the upcoming presidential election. And, there's been a lot of talk about just in general. And I think that the discussions are overblown, and I will go into my reasons for saying why. Um, Whenever you have any administration and some top official is either made to quit or leaves or is fired or whatever, you can bet that the person who comes in after the fact, especially if the relationship between the person leaving and the president at that time was good, is just going to be a carbon copy of whoever we had before. So, for example, Haley's received what I believe is reasonable flack for always being on the side of Israel, no matter what awful thing that people would say they did. And you have to understand that that's part of the U.S.'s overall stance where they don't challenge Israel in anything. But you also have to take into account that if she was never criticized to the point of changing that position her entire tenure as UN ambassador, what's to make you think that a different person who comes in after her is going to do something that is actually opposed to Israel at times? That's just one position, but you get the idea that no matter what stance she had, whoever her successor is, we can reasonably conclude, based off of her not getting removed for her performance in office, is going to regurgitate and do the exact same thing that she did. As far as the primary challenge is concerned, she's ruled it out, at least publicly. And I think even if she were to do it, she would get creamed because while there are a lot of people, including myself, that are not Trump fans and certainly, under no circumstance, as far as the things he's currently doing, would back him. You have people within the Republican voter base, so the ones who actually turn out and vote during the primary, would have no problem voting for him a second time. And that's effectively what I'm trying to get people to understand, that there can be a widespread public distaste toward Trump so long as the actual Republican voters are, in the tank for him. They don't. There's no reason to believe that he would actually lose a primary. I've heard Flake would challenge him. I've heard Corker would challenge him. I've heard Rubio, Cruz, all these different people would supposedly mount some bid against him. This has all been just over the last year and a half of him being in office, and I don't see any of it actually making a difference. People like to reflect on the older Bush and Buchanan going back and forth in the Republican 1992 primary, and it's going to be just like that, where the person might get some votes and they might maybe win a state, but even that still is not going to mean much when you factor in that you're running against the incumbent president of the United States, who has a base that for the most part is again connected at the hip with them. They don't see a problem with them. And one can say, oh well, maybe you can go over there and appeal to them, but if they fundamentally don't find enough fault to turn their back on this man this late in the game. Remember, primaries for the last election cycle started in March. If you count, Cruz when he jumped in March of the year before the actual election, which means we're in October, so November, December, we're 5 months away from the being at the exact same point in that timeline of when the first major candidate came out. So if it's this late in the game and they still are, all still buddy buddy with their high position of Trump or view of him, it's not going to change in the next few months unless there's some major bombshell, and I don't see it happening. So I think that she is done for right now. Maybe she'll come back in, you know, uh, 6 years and mount something, but I don't see it. She's already been governor. Um, I doubt she'll run against, Graham or Scott for senator. There's really nowhere else for her to go other than the talk show circuit, and people's heads of thinking, oh, well, maybe she'll challenge Trump. Maybe she can beat Trump. It's nonsense. Um, so That's my opinion on it. It's a departure that is not as big as people are saying it is, because the people who replace her will be as bad as she was, or do the same thing depending on your perspective of her performance. And the talk of her mounting a successful challenge against Trump not only has been ruled out by her publicly, but is not feasible. So thank you.